All right, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on where you are joining us from. Great to have you here with us. You are at the second webinar in our Empowering Your Emerging Adult series. This one's called Fostering Independence in Emerging Adults, a Balanced Approach to Growth and Connection. This webinar and learning community conversation is presented by the CAFÉ TA Center and facilitated by our friends Kirsten Drybrough and Charlotte Armstrong, to whom I will introduce you soon. So as always, before we jump into the content, I'll remind you a little bit about who we are, what we do. Apologies if you heard this before, but sometimes you're new people, so I always run through it. So the Family Cafe, who are we? What are we? We're a grassroots cross-disability nonprofit with a national scope. We serve people with all types of disabilities, all ages. We're based in Florida. My office is here in Tallahassee, where it's a lovely 74 degrees right now. The CAFÉ TA Center is our SAMHSA-funded consumer and consumer supporter technical assistance center. What does all that mean? Well, SAMHSA, of course, is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, part of the federal government. And they fund a number of programs to basically do training and information around mental health. A lot of them are clinical or academic in focus. The consumer and consumer supporter TA centers are unique in that they are operated by and for people with lived experience of mental health conditions. So everything we do here, it's not about, us giving expertise to people that don't have it. It's about people who are peers, who are having similar experiences, talking to each other and moving forward together. And coincidentally, I should also mention CAFÉ. Why does it have that wacky name? That's an acronym for collaboration, advocacy, friendship, and empowerment, which are basically the values that are behind everything we do here at the Family Cafe and at CAFÉ TAC. Like all good TA centers, we have a great website. That's at cafetacenter.net. I encourage you to check it out if you have not already. You can find all of our previous webinars, all the resources we've created on there, including a great family mental health resource that we'll tell you about at the end of the webinar today that Kirsten and Charlotte put together for us a couple of years ago. It's also where you can go to join our mailing list, and perhaps most relevant to today's conversation, that's where you will find the recording once we're done. So that recording will be posted both in the article about this webinar and also on the TA trainings page of the website. So if you want to go check it out, please do. It'll be easy to find. Tell you a little about myself and about my friend John before we get going. My name is Jeremy. I am the Vice President of the Family Cafe. I'm also the Project Director for the CAFÉ TA Center grant program. I'm a person with lived mental health experience. I'm also the parent of multiple kids who have both disabilities and mental health issues going on. So I'm right there with you if you're walking that walk right now. I have with me our training coordinator, John Ferrone, who's located in lovely Hastings, Nebraska. As we go through the webinar, John and I are going to be keeping track of what's going on in the chat and in the Q&A. We certainly encourage and welcome questions and comments. If you share them either in the chat or using the Q&A function, we'll make sure whatever you're bringing up gets worked into the conversation. All right, so with that, it's my great pleasure to welcome our two facilitators today, Kirsten Drybrough and Charlotte Armstrong, to introduce themselves and to jump into today's webinar content. So with that, welcome, Kirsten and Charlotte.
Oh, thanks, Jeremy, for having us. Kirsten and I always love hanging out with you and John and doing these webinars around supporting families as they're supporting someone who might be, a little bit of a crummy mental health or substance use. And why Kirsten and I are here is we're trained family peer supporters. And if you had asked me, it's like 17 years now, what is peer support? What's mental health? Or I wouldn't have known how to answer it. And then my oldest, who I call my tester child, she started to really struggle with her mental health and spent most of middle school and high school struggling and really not wanting to be on this planet. She was introduced to the power of peer support, and I truly believe it's one of the reasons why she's still here and thriving in a world that's defined by her and doing really great things with her life. And and for many years, I didn't think she would make it. But what was missing would have been a family peer supporter, supporting me on this journey, someone just been through something similar and there to share what worked in their story or what helped, and really be a place of, sharing and non-judgment. And when I found peer support and family peer support, I had a career change. And so I started training, and I became a trainer myself, and I train all over the US, Canada, and as well as doing work in Australia. I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Kirsten. Kirsten's got a little bit of a similar story and different.
Thank you, Charlotte. And as you said, always really great to be here. Myself, like Charlotte said, I'm also a family peer supporter, and I too train folks who are emerging into the world of peer support. A little bit about me. Charlotte and I do have a similar and different story. I have a daughter who is 25, and she lives in what I call wellness today. That means she's taken responsibility of her physical and mental health. And she certainly has come a long way from the years where she really struggled. And back in time when she was struggling, that appeared as depression, anxiety, anorexia, and a plethora of confusing things that I didn't understand at all. Both Charlotte and I completely understand that when one person in your family is struggling with a mental health challenge or substance use disorder, that the entire family is struggling. And for both Charlotte and I, that's one of the pieces that was really missing, was connecting with a family member who actually knew our walk, could support us because they had been through something similar. And that's what has brought us to our positions today. I always like to add too that both of our daughters are really proud of what we do. It's been over a decade that we've been working full-time in mental health, and they give us full permission to share stories. And you'll hear a little bit more about our families as we go through the webinar, but I always like to give that disclosure because they're pretty excited that we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah, and so this is the second webinar in this Emerging Adult series. And for any of you who haven't heard the first one, Jeremy made reference to where you can find the recording to it. And so this one we're talking about is, we're going to start delving into what does a balanced approach look like. But before we get going on that, Jeremy, if you can go to the next slide, and just a quick definition of what, family peer support, and it comes from SAMHSA, which Jeremy talked about earlier. And it really is just that place of reducing isolation, shame, and blame, and, allowing a place to, like I mentioned, share ideas, place of no judgment, and really, it's not replacing clinical, or it's just an added place where people can go to for resources. And I know that there's different organizations all across the US as well as Canada that do a lot of peer support. It's a little harder to find family peer support, but it is out there. And I'm going to pass it to you, Kirsten.
Thank you. My first experience with connecting with somebody in family peer support, we didn't even know it at the time. But with Charlotte, we met on the steps of our legislative building here up in Canada. And for the first time, I was looking at somebody who actually had a similar story to what was happening with my own family. And for me, she looked pretty normal, which I felt like I was the only one on this planet that was in the depths of where we were with my daughter at that time. So that was my first introduction to non-traditional peer support. And that's also how Charlotte and I decided we needed to do something and supply a platform where families can connect and feel supported from that lived experience lens, 100%. Now, we use the word family quite loosely. Family is to us whatever family is to you. So we're not holding it to a traditional model. We strongly believe in family of choice. And if there's somebody in your circle that you care deeply about, that's exactly who we're talking about when we talk about family. Could be a coworker, a neighbor, a friend, a friend's daughter, whatever it is. It's all inclusive. Yeah.
So Jeremy, if you go to the next slide, please. So today we're going to learn about, talking about that word empower and talking about how our actions may be hindering that emerging adult. We're going to explore strategies, and then we're also going to talk about, some practical tools that you may find that you want to start utilizing it, with your emerging adult. So that's kind of where we're going to go today. It's an hour presentation with it, half an hour Q&A after, and we're going to get going, Jeremy. Next slide, please.
So supporting versus enabling. It's really important that we understand both of these words, how we define them, before we move too far into this webinar. Supporting is walking alongside the person. So that means we're not showing up with an agenda. We're not there to fix, save, and solve. We're there to support them as they navigate life's challenges. And if you can recall, I always refer to my daughter living in wellness, defined by her, and myself being in a supporting role. So she's moving forward in life as a 25-year-old, navigating life's challenges. She's taking the lead, and I'm staying in that supporting role. And it took me a long time to figure out how to do that. Enabling. Well, that's one of those words that, it's a heavy word. It's something that comes up when we're supporting families over and over again. Always that fear of enabling your emerging adult. With the best of intentions, we certainly can find ourselves in that lane. And what we mean by enabling is taking actions that encourage or enable negative or self-destructive behaviors to exist in another. Or it's, our actions are allowing a person to be stuck, repeating patterns of self-destruction. It could be financial, it could be emotional. That's exactly what we're talking about, being in the role of an enabler. And I always joke when I give the definition of enabler or enabling, because for years I wore that hat 100%. And so every Halloween I make the same joke that I'm going to go out as an advocate disguised as, or enabler disguised as an advocate, because that was the role in the hat that I was playing for years. Charlotte, did you want to add?
Yeah, and as we go through this, I remember early on when that word enable showed up, and I was like, oh my goodness, I am doing so many things that's supporting my daughter being stuck. And I again, that shame and blame label came up. And so if you're feeling any of that as we go through this, just remember you're not alone. And I always say that, hey, listen, we did the best we could. And when we learn different, we can do different. And I stopped wearing that bad mom label, and just kept saying I did my best with the tools I had at the time. And when I learned different, I did different. And so just want to put that out there to everybody.
And I'm just going to add as well, Charlotte, when we go through this webinar, as we do with all our workshops and webinars, we're talking, we're both coming from that experience of 17 and 15 years into our story, right? So Charlotte and I absolutely, we learned a lot. We did things a lot differently back in time. Our gift is the lessons that we learned along the way, and the knowledge that we have now. But I know talking about a lot of things that are going to come up in today's webinar might have you feeling a little vulnerable. I just wanted to really put that out there that no, Charlotte, you and I, we did not get it right all the time, not even close. Yeah.
Thanks, Jeremy.
So I love this tagline. We talk about fix, saving, and solving often. And it's a question that I'd really like you all to just ponder and be open to thinking about how this shows up in your life. I'm a self-proclaimed natural fix, save, and solver, just in my being. When my daughter is in pain or struggling, I can't help but rush in and try to do for. That's my nature. And I still, even to this day, I still have to fight and resist falling into those patterns. But what exactly do we mean by fix, save, and solve? It's really simple. When my daughter was having a problem, it was overwhelming. It was causing her grief. No worries. I'm there. I'll fix it. I know what we can do. What I didn't realize at the time was that I was taking away opportunity of growth for her as a young person, as an emerging adult, because I was taking away the opportunity to problem solve for herself. Maybe I'll let Charlotte add a little bit and how that shows up in learned helplessness. Charlotte.
Yeah, and so we wanted to talk to you a little bit today about that word learned helplessness. And when we show up fixing, saving, and solving, we're encouraging or creating that learned helplessness with our emerging adult. So like that story Kirsten said, let me just sweep in and save the day, instead of allowing a space for them to come back and say, hey, I think this is what I need to do. And it was always with the best intentions. And my daughter was struggling. She was, very distraught. And all I wanted to do was make it better. But what I didn't realize is I wasn't allowing a space for her to learn how to make it better for herself. And so just by starting to change the way I approached it, or I showed up, or my wording around it, because one of the messages I was giving her loud and clear was, you can't do life without me. I need to be beside you, telling you how to do your life. And yes, that was with a mental health challenge that she had too. And so for all of you saying, I need to do this because my child, my partner, my whoever is really struggling, we thought the same thing. And it wasn't until Kirsten and I started to have that message to them that I know you have the power inside to figure this out, and I'm here to support you. That's when we started to see the biggest change in them taking ownership of their own mental health.
And that's fostering independence right there. Hey, Charlotte?
Yeah. And this is where family peer support really comes in. Because was I nervous? Yep. Was I terrified that it was going to get worse? Yep. And I had a family peer supporter there to support me with all of those fears so that I could show up in the best version of myself with some tools to keep those fears at bay, supports for me, so that I could keep that messaging happening to her. Jeremy, I think we'll go to the next slide. So I was teasing a little bit as I was saying about that power within, my daughter. That was my messaging. And that's really what empowering is supporting them to figure out, their confidence or their strength or that power within themselves. It's about supporting them to figure out the life that they want, instead of me telling my daughter what I thought life was supposed to be looking like for her. It was really watching what my messaging was, what my body language was, that I really do believe you can do this, and I'm here to do whatever I can to support you. But I need to hear it from you first. What would you like me to support you with? Or how would you like me to show up without doing for? Kirsten?
Yeah. And empowering tactics showed up very too late in my family story. Well, not too late, but way far along in my family story. And that's one of the things that if I could change, it would be changing how I supported my daughter and how I empowered her. And yet giving our actions are really the only thing we can control in our family mental health story. So the messaging that I was giving my daughter again when I was fix, saving, and solving and doing for, like Charlotte said, exactly that. I'm here and I'm doing for you because I don't believe you can really do for yourself. And then, you know, they start to believe it as well. So
Yeah.
going back in time,
Oh, no,
Well-
keep going, Kristen.
going back in time, I wish, especially around language and my actions, that I took an approach of, you've got this. I know you can do this. You are capable. And I 100% believe in you. But I think I gave the opposite message, to be honest.
Yeah. And then I was gonna ask you about like our nagging messages too. Like, when are you gonna go to the doctor? Have you booked your appointment to see your psychologist? When are you gonna get a job? Like all of those nagging messages. Because we wanted something better for them. And again, it was looking at how we could say it differently.
And, you know, one of the things that we hear a lot from family members and parents, especially if they have an adolescent, is they isolate in their room. Well, sometimes when we unpack that through our skills that we use with family peer support, what emerges is the fact that the nagging comes into play, right? When they come out of the room, you know, the parent is on them. And that's where my mind went when you shared that little bit, Charlotte. You know, our actions, again, only thing we can control, and to be really intentional with how we want to show up as a supporter. It just has so much power in their story as an emerging adult. Next slide, please. Oh, enabling actions. Well, again, we had to make a small list, but this list could have been 4 times as long easily. But, you know, doing things for a family member that they should or could be doing for themselves. If you're wondering, am what I'm contributing enabling my emerging adult? Well, ask yourself, are you doing things that they should and can be doing for themselves? Paying for things that keep a family member stuck or that you don't approve of. Example, rent, substance use, mismanaged money. Again, that comes up over and over again when we're supporting families. And we certainly have been in that position ourselves going back in time. Jumping in to fix, save, or solve for a family member. Well, I think if there was a trophy, I would have won the award for best fix, saver, and solver through my family story. Going back in time, that was my way of nurturing. That was my way of mothering, of supporting. And I just was really unaware of the implications that, you know, were really happening with how my daughter felt about herself when I would just jump in, fix, save, and solve. Charlotte?
You know, making excuses for family members, you know, her anxiety is really, really high. And I know she kind of was snippy today, but it was all about her mental health. Those are kind of some of those excuses that they may be showing up. And you'll be saying, yes, but it explains the actions or the behaviors. But does it? I remember that, you know, and my daughter's, you know, she's okay with me sharing this. She knew when she was conning me or, you know, using her diagnosis to get certain things. I remember her struggling and really struggling. I'm like, what can I do to make it better? And she'd say, I think I need a new iPhone. And I'm like, okay, we got to go get a new iPhone. I mean, those are the kind of things that you know, it's joking aside, but are you making excuses or are you allowing the excuse of the mental health challenge to dictate reasons for bad behavior? You know, the doing for or saying yes just to avoid conflict. I was walking around on eggshells. I was like, okay, you know, just whatever you need. I don't want the yelling or the crying to keep going. And I was exhausted from it. This one, I want you to think about parenting your emerging adult, like they're still an adolescent or a child. Are you still telling them, do your laundry, or you need to have a shower, or clean your room, or like all of those things like you did when they were a teenager, or in middle school, or elementary school. Because there's a place where we need to start to look at how we parent differently when they're an adult. If we're talking to them like they're a child, well, are they acting like a child? Do you want them to show up as an adult? Then, I'm going to say, let's take a look at how you're speaking with them. Because I remember when my daughter was living in our house, and she had a great setup, full fridge, lived in the basement, had everything she needed. And I was doing 4, and I was making excuses. And she was stuck in where she wanted to be. And I look back and I was like, oh my goodness, I was really adding to her stuckness, which really is about that learned helplessness. Are we fostering it? Just a question to think about.
Hey, Charlotte, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely, Kirsten.
Have you called and made excuses to doctor's office, work, family on behalf of your daughter?
Yeah, I went in I swear I should have had a cape on. I went into university to make it all better when she slept in and missed a test. Blamed it on the mental health challenge, and tried to get that 0 taken off. Again, I wasn't allowing a space for her to show up and be accountable for her own actions.
Thanks, Charlotte.
Well, next slide, Jeremy, please.
Hey, Charlotte, that's really funny that you mentioned the cape, because I had typed a little quip into the chat when Kirsten was talking. So it's kind of saying we have pictures of Kirsten with her cape on, but then I deleted that because I didn't want it to undermine the seriousness of what she was talking about.
It's true, Jeremy. I mean, and John, I think that if we had had a uniform back then, as we were the saving moms, and but yeah.
And you know what, here's the thing too, and it's really hard for us to sit in our own discomfort and not act. So when I had to start breaking those patterns of doing 4 and rescuing, and watch my daughter get really uncomfortable herself and feel life's consequences of her actions and choices, I had to learn to sit in my own discomfort and do nothing. And that was one of the hardest things in my family story that I remember doing, changing my ways on how I was showing up.
So some of the things to think about, some supportive actions, is really starting to clarify what you will and will not do moving forward. And this isn't in the heated moment of an argument. This is really a well thought out conversation that you've had with yourself first, and that you're really comfortable with what you're willing to do and not to do, and then presenting it in a way that's not confrontational or argumentative. It's not about control or punishment. It's just how you're going to show up. We were supporting a mom who's living in an apartment less than, because the mom was paying for a really nice apartment for their child, and going into debt every month for it. And financially, she couldn't keep it up. And so we supported her to figure out how to have that conversation and how to sit in her fear, because her biggest fear was, if I don't keep doing this, my daughter's going to take her life. And now I'm not saying to do one thing or the other, but we supported this mom to figure out what was best for her and how to best have that conversation with her child. Giving the emerging adult the space to make their own choices. Are you allowing that place for them to think about what they want, or are you just going in and telling them what you think they need? And then that experiencing the consequences. And again, if you're saying, I can't do this because I'm so scared of the impact of what might happen, but what about if you allow them to learn of what a consequence is and how to support themselves through it? Because for me, I didn't want my child living in my basement. I wanted her to have a great life. And yet everything I was doing was not that message that you can do this yourself. She's in Madrid, Spain right now. And there was a time where she wasn't leaving my house. And I think often that if I hadn't changed, would she be in Madrid right now? Sending that message that you believe in your, your emerging adult and in their potential. And that's with your words, with your actions. And sometimes it's with your silence. It's like, I know you can figure this out, so I'm going to give you some space. And with the best intentions and with the best love. Sorry, Kirsten, I got all excited. I'm going to pass it to you now.
No, you know what? And I was going to add, Charlotte, it's all so difficult to be intentional with our actions. And we're going through these lists and things that we have learned. But the reality is when we're in survival mode and we're just treading water, and it's not only gone on for weeks, but for years, it's really tough. So I just wanted to add that we're not making light of any of this. But hey, Charlotte, before I continue, will you tell the story about when your daughter's boyfriend broke up with her and how you chose not to? Yeah, you know what.
So my daughter had met this wonderful man, and they had been dating for, oh gosh, about 8 months. And then he said to her one day, I can't keep doing this world that you're living in. It's too much for me. And so I'm going to break up with you. And I can still be exactly at the space when that phone call, and she was screaming over the phone, and she was 2,500 miles away from me. And I was like, oh my goodness, I have to get to her. But I was a little bit ahead in my journey. And I knew that if I swooped in and showed up and picked her up and brought her back home, which is what I wanted to do, what was the right messaging? So I jokingly thought, I'll send her sister, because it's not me that's showing up. I'll get her sister to come. And her sister got COVID at that time. And so she couldn't fly. And I often think that it was the universe that was controlling this messaging. So what happened was my daughter was with family, but not me, not her sister, and not her dad. And she started to work on herself. And we just kept that message going as, you've got this, you can figure this out. And she worked on herself, and she changed some of her ways, and she started to do great things. And he was watching in the background. And 3 months later, they got back together, and they're married now. And oh, if I thought of it, if I had changed that and had her come home, which is what I wanted to do, I don't know if they'd be in Madrid right now. Like, I'm glad I didn't do what I wanted to do in that case.
And talk about sitting in your own discomfort, right?
Yeah, I needed supports around me, because I was really scared, because she was devastated. She thought he was her forever. And when he said no more, all of those things that she was experiencing in middle school and high school came flooding back. And she thought, I'm not going to go back to those ways. I got to work on myself. And she pushed through and figured out coping strategies for herself, talked to, some counselors, talked to her peer supporters, but she was controlling what she needed to get through those moments and those times. And she came out on the other side. Yeah. So it's like not rushing in. That was the biggest message for me on that.
Thanks for letting me poke you a bit, Charlotte. So continuing with our list, going back to supporting actions, and supporting actions are creating connection. Exactly. So be empathetic, be patient, be both firm and kind, validate. These are all tools for us as we communicate and connect with our emerging adult. You know, it's so easy to go furious and frustrated and, you know, should all over them. And when we say should, it's like, you should do this, you should do that. But if we can take a different approach and we can be really curious, empathetic, validate, letting them know that what they're sharing or what they're feeling, we see that, we know it's hard, and their feelings really matter to us. Nothing dismissive. Instead of rushing in with your solution, ask how you can best support them or what they would like from you. And I think Charlotte touched on this one earlier. It's so easy when someone's really heightened and struggling. And, you know, my daughter lives in wellness today with a diagnosis of bipolar. So there have been many times where she was really heightened and difficult to even connect with. You know, to sit and ask her what she needs from me instead of running in to fixate and solve. I really believe changing my ways of you know, what I was doing to a place of supporting her and empowering her brought her to where she is at 25. And it's not easy. So it's tough, and we still practice it, and we still support each other, Charlotte and I. But it really does build their confidence. You know, it helps them take accountability and helps them move forward into adulthood. I truly believe. Next slide, Jeremy. So there's a lot of things that we do as a supporter that is going to create connection or create great disconnection. And if we can get our head around supportive language, I guarantee it's going to be a positive and create more connection and less disconnection. So a few points we have up here, things to say when you're in conversation or even in crisis. That sounds really hard. I can see how upsetting and difficult this is for you. That's validation 101. How can I support you as you look at your options? Another one, I'm here for you. How can I support you? It's saying I believe in you. You have options. I'm here to support you as you figure that out. You know, and if we can think about changing the word help to support, how can I help you? What can I do for you? Now, if we can change those words to support, that language does have impact. No, I don't have the answers, or I can't do that. And I'm here to support you if you want to talk more about it. We don't have all the answers. We're allowed to say no. We choose how we're going to show up as a supporter. And really, in that moment, that's the only thing we do control, our own actions. So really focusing on language. Charlotte, did you want to do a few?
Yeah, and you know, like that, the next one, you're right. I don't know what it's like to be you. And then adding that, tell me a little bit more. Can you tell me a little bit more about what it's like for you? Instead of going in, you know, you're right, I don't understand what it's like for you. You should have been around when I was a kid. Like those kind of things really cause disconnection. But asking some curious questions around what it is like for them. I really want to, you know what it's like for you. How can you know, can you share a little bit more? Kirsten touched on, you know, I don't have all the answers, you know, but I like the adding in, I believe that you will make the right choice. Or, you know, I know you have the power within to handle this, and how can I show up and support you? Like those kinds of adding in that support you instead of let me fix or let me help you. I use the resilient person line with my daughter often. I said, you know, you're the most resilient person. Like, look at all the things that you've overcome. And I would list a couple of them. But sometimes she would forget. And again, it's that line, when you make your mind up, you make things happen. She had some crazy ability to get people to do things for her. And I was like, wow, if you could just bottle up some of that energy or creativity, like you can go places. Reminding her or reminding your emerging adult of those superpowers that they might have, or that resilience that they might have. Sometimes they forget. And validating again, life can be unfair. I'm really sorry you're struggling. Like, validation is so important. How can I support you again instead of let me fix you or let me save you? Just a little bit changing in your language can make such a difference. And I always like to say that often these conversations happened when I wasn't at my best. And it was usually late at night when I needed to go to sleep and had a busy day the next day. Like, all of those things, those are the moments when she wanted to talk. And I had to figure out how to get myself up and have those conversations, because when I was trying to have them on my time, it didn't work with her. So really thinking about any of these conversations that you want to have, is there better times for your person than for you? So for me, unfortunately, it was always between about 11 and 2 in the morning on a work day. Kirsten, did you want to add, or shall we move on?
No, I just want to circle back quickly. And Charlotte, you said you weren't always at your best. You know, when we're in crisis, when our family is off balance because of poor mental health or substance use disorder, chances are we become the last priority in the house. So I just encourage all of you, just to take time for you. And I know that sounds really fluffy and it's been said over and over again, but honestly, in those really hard times, to let your emerging adult know that, I want to talk more about this. I can't do that right now. I've got to be at work in 10 minutes, or I need to be up at 5 a.m., whatever it is, but I do want to talk about this. Even if you need to leave the home and go for a walk. But it's really, really hard to be intentional in really, chaos. So I'm just encouraging all of you to make sure you're taking care of yourself, making sure you're nurturing your own heart as well as every heart in your family. Again, the only thing we can control is our action. And I know for a lot of years, my daughter got a fractured version of myself. I wasn't taking care of myself. And that's one of the things I would change if I could go back in time, making sure that I was more balanced, I was okay, and I wasn't in reactive mode and survival mode 24/7. Jeremy, the next slide, please.
Well, that self-determination, and we put up a definition. Again, it's that messaging that I believe in you, and I believe that you have self-determination, and you're going to figure out what works for you. And I think that, again, I'm going to go back to my messaging was always that she can't do life without me. And so for her, self-determination was fractured. It would show up little bits, and then it would kind of scurry back and then try again. And it wasn't until I changed my messaging, I changed my actions and supported self-determination in her. But I also had to find it for myself. So when Kirsten was talking about putting her everybody else ahead of her and not taking care of herself, I was doing the same thing. And yet, if you had met me, 17 years ago, I would have said, this isn't about me. This is about saving my kid. I'm good. I'm fine. I've got this. And yet, like Kirsten said, I was living in reactive mode. I was living in fear-based, and I wasn't making a lot of the best choices for myself or for my family at that time. And so starting to think about, how does self-determination show up for you and for the rest of your family and for the emerging adult? Kirsten?
Yeah, one of the things that Charlotte and I often do when we're supporting family member a parent one-on-one of an emerging adult, is we ask them what recovery and wellness of their emerging adult looks like to them. And then we ask them a second question of what does recovery and wellness look like to your young adult? And honestly, 7 out of 10 times, the parent we're supporting doesn't have any answers because they've never asked the question. Again, self-determination, giving our emerging adult the space and the airtime to ask, what they would like to do or what life in wellness looks like to them. Again, my daughter is living, well, at this moment, she's living on the other side of Canada. She chose not to go back to school. Is she doing all the things that I would hope she would do at this age, at 25 in her life? Not at all. Is she managing and functioning and again, taking care of her own mental and physical health? 100%. Am I super proud of her? 100%. So, letting them steer the ship, letting them have input with what life looks like to them. Sometimes we don't give enough space for that in all the chaos. And we just want things to get back on track to as we planned. So really allowing for that self-determination and that space for them to, to take the next steps how they see would work for them.
And it's asking those questions, but in a way that's not like, what are you going to do with your life? But exploring with them, what gets them excited? What are some of the things that they're passionate about, and really supporting that self-discovery to figure out how they want to keep going in life or what they want to be. And like Kirsten said, is it everything that she thought? No. And is it everything that I thought my children would be doing? No, absolutely. But they're living a life that's defined by them. And I'm here supporting them and a bit of their cheerleader, because I'm super proud of both my girls. So Jeremy, the next slide, please.
And this is the perfect slide to move into autonomy and the emerging adult. So that's that individual's capacity for self-determination and self-governance. So, my daughter, in her 20s, should I know every corner of her world, what she's doing? I don't feel I should. I feel she has the right to privacy. And quite honestly, as time moves on, I don't want to know every corner of her world. And I think that's healthy for the both of us. So making sure that we allow that space for them to self-determine and self-manage their life. Again, there's no place to swoop in and do for. Do I still mother her and support her? 100%. If she comes home for a visit from time to time, do I do laundry? 100%. But again, those are the small bits. But when it comes to self-governing and managing her life, her health, that's on her. I'm here to support her if she wants to bounce things around, if she wants my input. I'd like to think that when asked, I have great influence. And again, I'm very intentional with how I show up in that role of a supporter when she does choose to share with me. Charlotte, did you want to add?
And so I'm going to go back to when we start off as a parent and we're a full manager with our child when, born till, maybe 12 years old. And then, we're a partial manager as they go into adolescence, allowing a little bit more freedom so they can figure out how to navigate life. But are we still managing as an emerging adult? Because our role really at that point is more of a consultant. That place of I'm here as a sounding board or a supporter or a cheerleader. I'm not here to fix, save, and solve you. And if you're saying yes, but there's a mental health issue attached to my emerging adult, I'm going to say us too. And both of us truly didn't believe that our kids could live outside of our houses or without us managing them. And yet they're pretty far away from us right now, Kirsten, thousands of miles away, and figuring out life on their own. And did they share everything like Kirsten said? No. And we don't need to know everything. We just need to know what they're willing to share to us. And where our job again is showing up in that supportive role.
You know, I just wanted to add one story because this still happens from time to time, but it was within the last year, twice this happened with my daughter. I got a phone call and she was at the hospital. She hadn't been taking care of herself. She knew she was going into mania. She took herself there. She got help. She had an IV with a little, I think it was Ativan or whatever it was to bring her down. She was just going to spend the night. You know, part of me wanted to jump in my car and rush out to make sure I could have eyes on and really know she's okay. But my messaging was, you know, I'm really proud of you for taking care of yourself like that. Thank you for calling me. You know, you've been here before. You know this passes. I'm here to support you. You know, just supporting her self-governance and confidence in her choices. There was a time where, you know, start the car, I'd be running down the driveway and headed across the country. That didn't happen overnight, but you know, I still find myself in that role where I have to kind of sit quietly and be really intentional with how I'm going to use my language, what I'm going to put forth. And then quite honestly, I hang up the phone, I call Charlotte and I get a little crazy. And that's okay. But I don't do that when I'm speaking with her. And Charlotte talks me off the cliff. So again, the power of that lived experience, right?
You know, and that's a place of what can you do to support yourself? So your messaging again isn't that I don't trust you or you can't do it. And Kirsten, you didn't lose your cool and say, why did you allow yourself to get to that place?
Yeah.
But that message of I'm so proud of you knowing that this is what you needed and you did it. And I think that just that little bit of change, and that you needed some support after you got off the call, so that you could keep the messaging correct.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And those are still unbelievably concerning times that I also know she needs to continue to develop skills to manage.
And I have one story to add. My daughter was having a panic attack a while ago. Oh, I guess it was in the summer, and it was her husband and myself. And I swooped in to take over and make it better. And her and her husband looked at me and said, "We got this," you know. And I had to step back, and I was like, "Whoa, you don't need your mother," because again, I still fall back into those patterns. And he was like, what are you going to do to support yourself? So her husband was using all that language that I used to use with her, but she had moved on and didn't need me anymore. And that's what I wanted for her, that you didn't need her mother to come in and swoop, save, and solve her. She knew what she needed in the moment, and they worked it through. And I got to just step aside and be proud of the fact she didn't need me anymore.
I'm just looking at the chat and I saw Carrie put in, she's trying not to do 4, and sadly that means dentist appointments aren't happening. Oh my God, the number of times that I called the dentist back in the day, canceling last minute. You know what? Let natural consequences, give yourself grace. There will be a time where they will decide that it's time for them to make sure they get to the dentist, for sure. My daughter does now all the time. There was a time that it was not easy and was a huge concern of mine. And unbelievably, her teeth are still good.
You know, and I was just looking at the chat too. So John was asking Kirsten about how we do role playing, and so when we're working with families, like parents or a mom, we don't come in as a family peer support and say, okay, this is what you need to do. We ask a lot of curious questions. What do you think you want to do? And here are, what are some of the things that you want to talk about? And so in the case of the mom who was thinking about stopping paying for the apartment, those are her decisions that she came to. And then she figured out a plan of how she was going to wean down paying. So she wasn't going to go cold turkey and say, I'm not paying the bills anymore. She was like, okay, presenting with a 6-month plan where her emerging adult had space to find a job that could support the rent, that could do all of those things. And we practiced how she was going to talk about it. Because one of the things that came up for her was she was really fearful that any bit of change and her daughter would take this as I can't do life anymore. And that was her biggest fear. And so it was a many time conversation with her, like the mom and I working through how she was going to do it, what time of day that she was going to have this conversation and laying it out. And we did some role playing. So I said, do you want me to play a child who's hysterical, or do you want me to, like, which one do you want me to do? And she said, well, give me the worst version. If I can survive that, then I can do it. And so I played a hysterical emerging adult, and she said, okay, I think I've got this. But what has happened in that story is her daughter is showing up and contributing to the rent and putting a plan together so that she can continue on and support herself. And the mom isn't going into as much debt as she was. But the mom decided the terms. It wasn't Kirsten and I telling her what the terms should be. Do you have another example, Kirsten?
No, that's a great example. What I was coming to mind for me was I was thinking about that mental health umbrella that we often talk about. And often behaviors, myself, I've always put them under, my daughter's mental health umbrella, excusing them. And, this is why she was acting a certain way, or this is why I had to do for, and it was all under this big mental health umbrella. And it took me a long time to start to realize that some of those behaviors under my mental health umbrella I made for my daughter were just bad behaviors and skills she learned to get her own needs met. So she knew what buttons to push on myself. And again, I'm not saying that as a real negative against her. It's just reality going from, moving through life from adolescence to emerging adult. It's a really, really scary time for a lot of young people. But yes, I had to weed out a lot of behaviors from the umbrella that I used as a big excuse. And by doing that, it allowed me to, pick and choose where I was going to reframe my language, what I was going to support and not support. And yeah, I just wanted to share that little bit because I know we all have those umbrellas, especially when there's a heavy mental health challenge within the family.
And Jeremy, I was just looking at your point. It's important to ask a person what they want instead of just assuming. And that assuming, but also, I had a version of what I thought my girls were going to be like. And listen to me, my girls, this is what my version, it was all, and when I started to ask them what they wanted, it was a lot different. And I'm glad they're not versions of what I thought they should be. They're their own person, and they're doing some pretty amazing things now. I'm going to turn it over to you, Jeremy, because we're at the top of the hour. We can do Q&A, but I'm going to let you take the lead on this.
Well, I'm going to cut in before Jeremy puts his microphone on. See, I beat you there, Jeremy.
That's rude, John.
That's okay. I wanted to clarify about the comment I had made to Charlotte and Kirsten. I was actually asking if right here in the webinar, if you might be able to kind of role play where one of you is a youth and the other one is the parent, and to demonstrate some of the techniques or the tone and so forth. And you don't have to, of course, I'm putting you on the spot, but if that's something you're comfortable doing, I think because you guys have done such a great job explaining kind of the theories, the concepts, and the techniques and so forth. And you're obviously gifted at that and gifted at having learned to implement them. And I'm just wondering if you might be able to showcase that.
Well, John, we do improv all the time in training. I'll play the child or the emerging adult person. You get to be the parent. Do you have a scenario that you want us to
I need
do?
a scenario. Yeah.
Well, now I'll let Jeremy talk. Go ahead, Jeremy. Give him a scenario.
Okay. Let's say the young adult is living at home and not contributing financially, and the adult is trying to suggest to them that they should try to get a job. Oh, it's the same thing that Carrie put in the chat. It seemed weird coincidence.
Teenager stuck in room refusing to get a job.
Yes.
Very common. Okay. All right. So Charlotte, what are you going to play? Are you going to play the parent or
I'm
the
gonna play
teenager?
I'm playing the teenager.
Charlotte's the deadbeat.
All right. All right. Um, hey, Charlotte, do you have a minute? I'd really like to discuss something for you. Is this a good time?
Oh, Mom. What do you want to talk about?
Well, summer's coming up really fast, and I was wondering if you had any plans on looking for a job or employment this summer, or what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah.
So what does yep look like to you? Can you explain a little more?
Yeah. I'll get a job.
Oh, okay. Well, that's really nice to hear. Do you have any of your next steps figured out, or?
Well, maybe next week.
All right. Well, Charlotte, summer is only 8 weeks long, and I have a feeling that a lot of those jobs might be scooped up if you don't act on it sooner than later. But listen, I'm going to leave that with you. It's really good to hear that you do have some plans and that you do plan on getting a job. As you work through your next steps, let me know how I can support you with that.
So, what are you saying?
Okay, I can't keep doing this, Charlotte. I'm sorry, but she's very good. But I think just changing the approach and coming in curious instead of furious, and one of my favorite lines is when my daughter or when a young person gives the yup, huh, what, or whatever just kind of response you're getting, to just ask them a little bit more. What does that look like to you? Or have you thought of those next steps? And honestly, in that moment, nothing is going to be nailed shut or solved in a moment. That's the first of several conversations and the beginning of a much larger group of conversations. But Charlotte, did you want to add?
Yeah, and one of the things that showed up, and I was trying to be difficult and short answers but when I stopped getting combative, my daughter knew that if she did, if I was saying to her, you need to get a job, and quit loafing around, she would say a couple of things, I'd lose my temper, and she knew the reaction. So she already had the plan, and she knew how to handle, yelling mom. But when I stopped yelling and I started to say, you know what, this is how far I'm willing to go in this conversation. I'm not going to keep paying all of your bills. And I had to hold true to that. And I did it in a way that wasn't, I'm not paying these bills anymore, but I'm not doing this anymore. You're 18. If you're not going to go to university, you got to figure this out. Because the deal was, if you were going to go to university, I would, pay your phone and your bills, but you seem to have a different plan now. And it was like that switch to adulting. But I had to own up to what I was willing to do and not do. Because she knew if she got me upset, I'd still pay the phone bill. She knew if she got me upset, I would still do, because that's what I always did. But I had to start holding true to my end of the bargain. Sorry, John.
No, you're fine. I was just going to ask. I was going to ask if I could give it a try and be the dad.
Absolutely.
Charlotte, you're on.
Well, yeah, the same teenager. Because I really liked what Kirsten was doing, and at the same time, it was almost like the two personalities that you both brought to life. And it's tough to do when you're just kind of role playing on the spot. But what's the common, I guess the common denominator or the bridge between the two of you, aside from here you are, two moms, two professionals with this lived experience, and you're suddenly role playing and you didn't have any time to prepare. So, so I was going to try and fabricate in a way, anyway, some sort of bond. So I knock on the door. I think Carrie said that gaming nonstop. So you're gaming. So knock, knock, knock. Hey, Charlotte, what you up to?
I'm in the middle of a game, Dad. Geez, did Mom send you down? Oh.
No, cool. I just got home from work. What are you gaming on today? What game are you playing?
Call of Duty.
Oh, nice. Did you get down with a good team?
Yeah, it's my same team.
Nice. How many times have you died?
Huh. I'm just slaying it today, Dad. Slaying it.
Cool. Do you mind if I look over your shoulder? I love watching you play.
Sure.
I want to see your weapon of choice. Are you carrying around an M60 today?
Oh my God, Dad. When are you going to try playing this with me instead of just watching?
Boy, I'll tell you what, I've always wanted to play this game, but I think if I start playing, I won't stop. I got an idea. One of the things that your mom and I have been talking about is, well, just some of the ongoing expenses. And I know you've heard it, and I won't have to say it again, but I've got a different idea here. But maybe having you help out with some of the bills and or chores, a combination of things. So don't stop playing. Keep going. You can kill while you're listening. What if I make you a deal? I'll play and check it out, and maybe we can form a duo or something. But the deal is, and maybe in the next 2-3 weeks or so, you kind of figure out how to generate some income to help pay for things like this, because this costs money. And obviously, we love that you're playing and engaging and making friends online and stuff, but there's a cost to it. Does that sound like a fair deal?
Sure.
Your stunned silence is awfully reassuring. Okay, so anyway, thank you. Thanks for humoring me on that. little hypothetical. Just really, again, just trying to demonstrate whatever it is in our kids' lives, meeting them where they're at and trying to form some sort of bridge. And that obviously was pretty stilted as well, but hopefully it could be a lot more natural if in real life. But
You know what was the important message, John, on that is curious, not furious.
mhm.
Getting a little bit into their world, and being curious about what does gaming look like. Because I came in with biases. My daughter gamed for a while. I thought, oh, this is not good. And yet, it was creative, it was community, it was lots of things that I hadn't thought about. That was part of it. And it was for her stopping what was happening in her head. It was giving her a place of escape. It was one of her coping strategies. And she doesn't do it, like she does it not very much at all anymore. And yet she went through a period where that was what she was doing all the time. And I was really angry and I never gave it a chance. So what you were doing, John, is creating connection. And you know what? You could, in that conversation, introducing the concept, but you can circle back to it.
Yeah.
And sometimes when our kids are doing something that they like, they're still hearing what we're saying. And they may not want to have that sit down face to face across from the dining room table. You were meeting me on my terms in my room, John, as I was gaming, and I was hearing what you were saying. Now, am I going to get a job? I don't know, but you didn't disconnect from me, which was the thing that I want to talk about. And you as dad need to figure out what your boundary is on how it's going to look like if I choose not to get a job. There's some consequences that you can put on, I'm not going to do whatever. It's not putting the consequences on the kid. It's how we're going to show up as a parent. That's what I need all of you to think about. What are you going to do different?
Yeah.
Just to add, Charlotte, what we often have seen in a very similar situation is from a conversation behind the scenes. Typically, mom or dad are sending like 15 job postings a day. All of a sudden, they're working on their son's resume. So here's the piece that we need to stay out of is doing for, and not just jumping in and making it happen. And if they don't do for themselves and they don't take action, the consequences of a less comfortable conversation or some disappointment. But it's staying out of that role of fix, save, and solving, because we honestly, we've had this conversation with several families where mom's sending on Indeed 3 times a day, sending posts, apply for this, apply for that.
And a final funny story, not funny at the time. I was the nagging mom, get a job if you're not going to go to university. And so my daughter went and got a job working at a motor hotel in the lounge, like the worst place ever. And she did it on purpose to get a reaction out of me. I'm like, oh my goodness. I didn't stop her from getting that job, and everything inside of me didn't want her to go there. So now she's stuck in a job that she thought that I would react to, and I didn't. But then she realized she didn't want to work there, and then got a better job from it. So instead of me reacting and getting her to not take that job, she chose a different career from it. Again, I had to sit in my discomfort because it was in a terrible part of town. All of the things that she chose that job to get a reaction out of me. And she had to make that choice and make the change when it happened.
Hey, Charlotte, I'm going to add to that. Do you remember my daughter's first job that I thought was going to be a disaster?
I think of that story all the time.
I know. My daughter, her first job at 19, kind of coming out of being in a really hard place with her mental health. I felt she should be at the mall folding sweaters and working in a little clothing store, something comfortable, just part-time, start off a few days a week. And she found herself a job working full-time doing residential cleaning. And I thought, what a disaster. It's going to be a setback. This is going to be horrible. Well, I was very wrong, because not only was she working like every day starting at 7 a.m., she was never late. She took it so seriously, and she stayed there for about 4 months until she decided to move on to something else. But if you looked at her room, I was absolutely sick about it. Again, Charlotte was supporting me as I was like, wow, this is not going to end well. And again, I got it super wrong, right?
At the end of the day, we're the only person we can change.
Mm-hmm.
It's how we show up, and then what supports we need, so we can show up in the best version, like Kirsten said, of ourselves.
Yeah.
Guess we'll turn it to you, Jeremy.
Sure. I was just putting the chat, opening up to any questions or anything that we had. So here's one from Michelle. Can we talk about the grief that accompanies the hopes and dreams you have for your child? I recognize that it's more grief and not necessarily disappointment, but sometimes disappointment. That's definitely something we come across a lot in the disability field. We often talk about that whole process of, you have a kid and you have expectations for that kid, and then depending on what's going on with them, they might be a toddler or a baby, and you find out, oh, this child has a disability, and that's going to completely change my expectations for what life is going to look like. And there is a grieving process around that. And I think the same thing is true if you're talking about young adults with behavioral health conditions. You probably had some idea in your mind, my kid's going to go to school and get a degree, and then they're going to get a good job and, wear a tie and get married and buy a house and all that kind of stuff. And then you have to let go of that expectation and, deal with whatever emotions come with that and change those expectations. So what kind of guidance do you give people around how to process that kind of grieving?
Well, I'll jump in and I'll let you add, Charlotte, because this one hits home for me. First, I just wanted to validate, like, there is serious loss when you're giving up what you thought life was going to be for your family. There's just loss. You call it grief. So, for myself, I remember social media was really, really hard. Like, everybody was moving forward. My family story, my daughter didn't go back to school after grade 9. We homeschooled her, which was not easy. And she barely left the house for about 2 years. I mean, barely. And I would look, and everybody else was moving on in life, celebrating birthdays. And, I truly believe to mitigate the loss and sadness that comes with that, I think we're allowed to feel exactly what we feel as a parent. I think connecting with like-minded parents, like in a family peer support group, or another family, like Charlotte and I do on our Wednesday night groups, or supporting families, helped mitigate the shame and that comes with that loss. And those years don't last forever. Although if somebody said that to me back then, I'd ask them to put that in writing, because I had very, very little hope that anything would change. But I think there's definitely a place that we just need to sit with that for a little bit, and connecting with other families, and connecting with a family peer worker. For me, I mean, that was the thing that started to make me more comfortable with what was happening in my house. That was the thing that helped me realize it wasn't just a failure as a mother, because back then I also thought if my daughter wasn't thriving, I clearly was failing as a parent. Learned a lot since then. But, I think my point is, we're allowed to feel what we feel, and we don't have to do it alone. And having said that, always be careful what advice you take from friends or family, because if they haven't walked in your shoes, they really don't know how difficult or what it looks like for you. Charlotte, did you want to add?
Yeah, I think that it's figuring out what each of us needs. And I know for me, I didn't realize how much that was impacting me. Michelle, I'm reading your comment right now. Because my life as I imagined it was nowhere near what I thought it would be. And so what I found I needed was connection and community with people who were going through something similar, because it normalized this world that isn't normal to a lot of people that I know. And I found that when I leaned into people who couldn't relate, it just really added to that shame and blame and disconnect that I found. And so I encourage you to reach out to some things, different things, to figure out what you need, and not give up, because I called it, I would go underground, and I isolated, and then that's when that negative self-talk of what my life was not looking like had a huge impact on me. And so, Jeremy, it is that what peer support is all about. Kirsten and I are really passionate about peer support. It's not everything, but it's a good part of figuring out what your life can be like. It's just having conversations with others and asking what worked for you. Like, what did you do to make it different? And then picking what you think you want to try.
And hope, right? Because
Hope.
when you're in the trenches, it's very easy to lose hope. And both Charlotte and I purchased homes that had a space where I had a third floor that was a suite that I felt my daughter would live with us forever. And that certainly isn't how the story unfolded. So, yeah.
There's one thing that came up earlier I just wanted to return to real quick before we get to the bottom of the hour. Kirsten, you were telling the story about how when your daughter realized that she needed like a break and wanted to sort of get an overnight medical intervention, that you were like ready to hop in the car and drive over there, and then you stopped yourself, right? So that was kind of like
Yeah.
a win for you in terms of your ability to create space for her to, make her own decisions and manage herself, right? So you get an A for that, right? But my point is this: what's your advice to people who realize that they get into situations like that and then they screw up, and after the fact they're like, oh, now I just went backwards and like undid whatever progress I made of trying to back off and give this person space to figure out things themselves, and then I got scared, I got freaked out, something happened, and then I jumped in, and now I realized I shouldn't have done that. Um, how do you help people kind of work through the idea that, you're not going to be perfect all the time, and that your progress and your ability to relate to people that way isn't going to be a straight line?
Yeah, well, I use a phrase, I say, all is not lost in a day or a moment. All the work that we put forth was being intentional with how we support our family member. We don't always get it right. And when we don't get it right, I think we also have that opportunity to share with, like, I think if I did not get it right with my daughter and I did, take off and show up in a panic, I think there's a place after that to own what you did and reinforce that she had this and you didn't need me, or however you wanted, whatever the situation is. I think there's always a place to undo what we've done and to own our actions, and to also own that we didn't always get it right. So that's one piece of it. And the other piece of, using that phrase, all is not lost in a day or a moment, all the work that we've done on ourselves, and how we've supported our family member. When we screw up, all the work ahead of it isn't lost. right? There's also some moments to learn and own what we've done. So that's what we hear a lot from parents. Like they were doing so well with having a plan and being intentional and how they were connecting. And then they had a really hard night and everything went awful. And they were just sick about it. That happens, right? And there's space to just recoup that and own that. And it doesn't wipe out everything that came before.
And I was just going to quickly add that when you start to have these conversations with your child and when you own your part in it, like, oh, I really overreacted last night, they're aware of it and it just opens up more of a conversation. And so, you know, for me, when I did that and I said, oh, my anxiety got the best of me, I was so worried. And then we started having a conversation of what I was doing to manage my anxiety. And my daughter was sharing what things that she was doing. But what Kirsten and I didn't do was, you know, because of what you did, I overreacted. I always owned my actions on, this was me. This had nothing to do with you. I'm owning this one. I knew you were managing yourself or you were really trying to figure it out. I came in all nervous and owning it, not blaming.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeremy, just real quick, sorry to cut in here, but we're just about out of time, and I just wanted to check and see. I can't remember if there were hours available for
Yeah, there
individual.
are. And in fact, I was going to mention that because Kimmy has a question here.
Yeah,
in
Kimmy could
chat
follow
that
up
I
with them.
think is probably a more complicated question than we can answer in the minute or so we have left. So let me just run through these couple last things I wanted to mention. First of all, as I said at the top, there's a whole family mental health 5-part workshop that's available on our website. If you wanted to sort of find a way to do a little bit of self-guided stuff around all of these family mental health and caregiving issues, that's a great resource. There's a whole workbook and a 5-part series with video, and I encourage you to check that out on our website. As John just alluded to, one of the things we have available is an opportunity to work individually with Kirsten and Charlotte. So if that's something you're interested in, we do have some hours set aside for that. You can reach out to them directly. You can see their email addresses there on the slide. Of course, you're probably like, oh, I can't write that down or cut and paste it because that's always a thing. So you can reach out to us at cafetacenter.net and we will hook you up with Kirsten and Charlotte. Or as I mentioned, this is going to be posted as a recording on the website. So once the recording is up there, you can go watch the recording and pause on the slide so you can get the email addresses that way if you can't copy them over real quick at the moment. But, you know, it's a great way if you want to talk more about your individual situation, that is available to you. And then the last thing I want to mention before we run out of time, this is part of a series we're doing throughout our grant year, which ends in March. So we have 3 more family mental health webinars on the horizon. The next one is going to be on January 22nd. So we'll be sending out information about how to register for that one at the beginning of the new year. So please do join us for that. So that pretty much gets us to the end of today's program. Again, I'd just like to say thank you. Thank you to everybody for being here and for, you know, being open to all this and for sharing what you shared in the chat about your own situations. I know everybody out there is going through their own stuff and it's not easy, but, you know, we have each other. That's what this is about. Again, you want to reach out to Kirsten or Charlotte, please do. If you want to reach out to us here at Cafe TA Center, please do that using that Gmail address. And yeah, you're going to find this recording hopefully by the end of today. It'll be up there. It'll be in the article about the webinar, and it will also be on the TAC trainings page of our website. So thanks very much, Kirsten and Charlotte. Appreciate you as always.
Thanks for having us, Jeremy. We
Our pleasure.
love doing these.
And thanks, John, for chipping in and doing your great dad routine. I appreciated that.
Call of Duty.
And we'll see everybody next time. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye. Take care.